grassroots nonprofit organization that advocates for policies empowering everyday Asian Pacific Islander Nevadans. Nevada is home to a growing APIA community, accounting for 1 in 10 voters. We are One APIA Nevada. Concili Incorporated is Nevada's premier Democratic campaign firm, fighting for progressive issues and candidates for over a decade, and proud sponsor of Battleborn Progress.
This episode of Out in Front brought to you by
Concili Inc., Nevada State Education Association, One APIA Nevada, Silver State Voices, and Stefan and Marta Schmidt, as well as our episode sponsors, Save Lives Nevada and Washoe Education Association.
Front with Annette. My name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. So excited to have you this evening. We had a big day. All of us were down in Laughlin today who are on the show tonight, out there supporting, hopefully, our new national monument, Avi Kwa Ame National Monument, down in the southern tip of Southern Nevada. It's such an incredible piece of land down there that we're trying to protect and preserve for future generations. And I'm joined by some of my favorite people to talk about this important event that happened today with the Bureau of Land Management, so that we can hopefully get over this next hurdle, let them hear from the community, which 250 people turned out on a Thursday morning in Laughlin. That's unheard of, to make their voices heard about this important piece of land and this sacred piece of land. So tonight I am joined by 3 of my favorite people and experts on this area. The first person is Taylor Patterson, our fabulous board member and friend of the show. She is the Executive Director of Native Voters Alliance of Nevada, part of the coalition that's working to protect and preserve this monument. We also have our friend Alan O'Neill returning. He is the former superintendent of Lake Mead National Recreation Area. And we have Ashley Lee returning. She is with OHV and she's an OHV and off-road organizer, and she is also a great part of the Avi Kwa Ame coalition. So I want to welcome all 3 of you back to the show. Thank you so much for all your work today. I know it was a team effort to get everybody out today. So Taylor, explain to the audience what today was about. First, let's back up. Explain to the folks at home what Avi Kwa Ame is, since we're coming back from the election season. Everybody's kind of getting a refresher tonight about Avi Kwa Ame and the campaign that we've been working on for the past couple of years. And then tell us about what happened this morning in Laughlin and why that's so important.
Absolutely. So if you have never heard of Avi Kwa Ame, I don't know where the heck you have been. You certainly are not a regular viewer of this Thursday night program, because we have covered Avi Kwa Ame plenty of times here. But essentially, as Annette mentioned, it is the campaign to designate Nevada's newest national monument at the very southern tip of Nevada, sort of in between the Searchlight and Laughlin area. And so this area is sacred to over a dozen tribes. It's got a ton of ecological treasures and a bunch of wonderful features all across the area. And so if you've forgotten about Avi Kwa Ame, I also am horrified, because how could you? We've been working so hard on this campaign. Alan has been working on this campaign essentially since 1999 with the designation of Spirit Mountain itself on the historic places registry. I always butcher that name. But today we all came together in Laughlin at the Aquarius Casino to hear from the public about what they think of this monument proposal. And so we had over 200 people all coming together to support and talk about why they find this area to be a really special place. I think it was really exciting because I just even though I've spent 2 years on the campaign now, collecting letters of support and meeting with different stakeholders and having these different meetings, it's amazing to see all of that support in one room and see essentially every person I've ever met all in one space. And so we were very lucky to meet with Tracy Stone Manning, the director of BLM, as well as our state director of BLM, John Raby, and oh goodness, I'm going to totally forget her name, from the Department of the Interior as well. So we had some great officials from the federal government there to hear all of the public's testimony and support for Avi Kwa Ame.
Thank you for that. So Alan, I want to bring you in. Obviously, this is a very important place for you as well. You've been working on this campaign for a very, very long time. We're hopefully so close to the finish line to getting this designated as a national monument. Today was a really important next step for the monument designation process. So talk to us about why this land is so special to you, but also why it deserves the designation as a national monument and what protection that will create for the monument. Oh, Alan, you're on mute. Come on.
Sorry about that. I've been involved in this for a long time, since the 1990s, more specifically toward the end of the 1990s, when we got Spirit Mountain itself designated as a traditional cultural property. That was the first step in the process to recognize that this landscape's different. That particular category was new to the National Historic Preservation Act, and it recognizes landscapes that have an important spiritual and sacred connection to living communities. In this case, our Native American tribes that Taylor mentioned, at least 12 tribes have an association to this mountain. So the problem with that designation, it is only designated the mountain itself. That process limited us to a more narrow scope. And personally, I had a commitment to the tribes that we would visit that continually until we had an opportunity to protect the larger associated landscape. I retired from Lake Mead about a year after that, but never lost interest in that commitment I had to the tribes, and weighed in on almost every planning process that Bureau of Land Management had. And we fought several really bad industrial level wind projects during that time. Finally, when the Crescent Peak Wind Project was defeated in 2018 in November, we said something has to be done to provide permanent protection. And that's when the whole Avi Kwa Ame coalition started to build. And again, that was in March of 2019. And so we've been at this 3.5 years, carefully building and doing the homework of engaging local communities, engaging the various constituency and user groups who have an affiliation with this landscape. And I've been involved in public land issues now for 56 years professionally, and I've never experienced a process that came together as well as this in terms of doing our homework. You know, we did our homework. We got everything lined up. Now it's up to, BLM, the department, and the president to get this designated. We did exactly what we were asked to do by various political interest and such, and we did that, and we feel good about it. And today was an evidence that worked. To have that many, I've never been to a public meeting that had that many people that were given incredibly supportive comments, not just lukewarm comments. I mean, to have the mayor of Henderson, our second largest city, saying that was important to the city of Henderson. I mean, you gotta pick up and get notice to something like that. So this isn't the normal kind of a process that these go to. This is much more over and above, and I think that's why all of us are excited. Now, you may ask, what the heck is a national monument? National monument is one of the highest protective designations we have on any of our public lands. We thought that was the appropriate. This landscape needs permanent protection, has some temporary protection to some overlays, but they're only administrative protections. They're not they're permanent, and they can be changed by changes in administrations and such. So the idea was to get permanent protection. One of the goals, obviously, is to protect the native plants and animals. There's tremendous diversity in this landscape. The desert tortoise is one, but there's 35 additional species of concern in terms of conservation targets that are on this landscape. So, those important to protect those permanently. Obviously, the cultural sites, the values, the practices of our native things, that was important to this whole building of the monument, that we feel like the native people who have ancestral connection to this need to be involved and engaged more in the planning and the stewardship of this landscape. And we can see that coming together. And today was evidence of the commitment that all of us have to make that something like a little bit different model than we've seen anywhere in the country. And of course, we have an interest. Ashley's here representing the OIF community, but we want to protect these existing recreational uses. They're important, whether it's off-road driving on backcountry designated roads, or hunting or camping and such. These are important things to protect. Also, the dark night sky. We're blessed to have dark night sky. This landscape, that could be an important educational tool, and a place on which some of our school kids and our urban people can come out and enjoy the Milky Way and things that most of them have never seen. So, anyone that's driven this knows there's these spectacular viewscapes that are there. Those viewscapes are threatened by industrial level projects like wind farms. And so that's what makes the desert so incredible. You can see for 20, 30, 40 miles, and in some cases within the monument. Always present in that viewscape is Spirit Mountain. It's like central, almost anywhere in the monument you can see Spirit Mountain. So we want to prevent this being fragmented, this landscape, by industrial level projects that would screw up what we've been working on in decades on the California side and such. And so we have an opportunity here to do something for climate that I don't think exists anywhere in our state. This is probably our best bang for the buck in terms of meeting the goals of climate change and President Biden's America the Beautiful program and here. By connecting already existing protected areas, providing a much larger, connected, integrated system that has all the elevation, gradients and nooks and crannies and migratory routes and such. And when species are faced with higher temperatures and less rainfall, they have the ability to make adjustments within that larger landscape. So we don't want to forget that point, that renewables are important, but they don't need to take place in every landscape. For climate change, this is our best action that we can take in Nevada. In my mind, I can't think of any other place in the state that has the ability to have that connective tissue, the monument, connect to already existing protected areas.
I do want to mention too, I'm just cutting you off, Annette. This is my show as much as
this is your show. I just work here.
But I do want to say a thing that I think people really underestimate too, especially those of us that are so deeply ingrained in the West, is the mountains and just how significant and how amazing all of the mountain ranges are. Since I've been working on this campaign, I mentioned for the last 2 years, about a year ago, I got to travel to Scotland. And they were very impressed to say, look, this here is the tallest mountain in the United Kingdom. And I said, that's pretty much a foothill, you guys. I hate to be insulting with this. But it's got nothing on any of our mountain ranges, especially all of the mountain ranges that we have in Avi Kwa Ame, and so much interesting geologic feature that I can't get over. And when Alan and I went out, it was so amazing to see just how different each mountain range is, how different each area is. And also, Alan, I know you have to always mention our beloved Joshua trees as well. We do have such a wonderful space of Joshua trees, and Joshua tree forests in the monument as well. So just had to highlight some of that extra diversity that I think we forget about here in the Southwest.
Hey, Taylor, while I have you, I wanted to also mention, we did have a lot of our congressional delegation present today in the room, listening to the different testimony and listening to, all of the different speakers that came before the Bureau of Land Management to hear, different sides of the issue and things like that. A great deal of those speakers were folks that, come from the tribal community because this is their land. Can you talk about some of the testimony that our congressional members heard today and why keeping those boundaries intact and respecting those boundaries it's so important to this monument, because those boundaries are a representation of their land and the decisions they're making about their land. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I was actually just doing a little bit of a tally, and so by my count, we had 8 tribal government representatives come today, and then beyond NVAN, we had another Native American organization represented there too, with the Native American Land Conservancy. And so we have 8 different tribes out of the, like we mentioned earlier, over a dozen that made time out of their very busy schedules fighting all sorts of developments, water grabs, land grabs, all of these things to come out today and really support each other and come together on this one topic, which is preserving this area that all of us share ancestral ties to, and really having a common ground to work on. I alluded to in my comments today that every square inch of this monument is important, and every space in this monument is culturally significant. I'm very, very tired of the sort of Western small mindset that if it's not an agave roasting pit, if it's not a arrowhead or petroglyph, it is not significant. Every piece, every sliver of that space is significant. And so we can't pick and choose and say, oh, this place is more significant than this place. All of that landscape needs to be intact. And having that concept of connectivity that Alan was alluding to in the biological sense is just as important in the cultural sense. And so I very much push back at this idea that you could be for part of a monument. This isn't about just getting any monument. You get some land, we'll give you this piece or that piece. This is about keeping the entire space of Avi Kwa Ame intact. And I think the Fort Mojave tribe, along with the others, have been very, very clear that Avi Kwa Ame is not just this space in Nevada. That is the movement through California, Nevada, and Arizona. So every single space needs to stay intact. And I'm so grateful for Congresswoman Titus really standing up and putting that in her legislative bill to say, this is what not only tribes have agreed on and said that they need to have this space, but this is what our stakeholders have agreed to as well. And I think a lot of folks don't realize that we as tribal folks are being very measured in this. If it was up to us and Alan was in on these very early negotiations, there would be much more land that would be in this monument, and you guys would be overtaken by the Avi Kwa Ame National Monument. So I just want to be clear that to all of our partners, supporting tribal folks on this means supporting the current boundaries, no slivers.
I just comment on that because there's really no lands in here that are designated by Clark County for economic development. Absolutely zero. And there's not 1 acre in this monument that is designated by the Bureau of Land Management for solar or wind. So back to thing, you're working with mainly existing public lands, and so providing an extra level of protection is not going to have adverse economic impact. In fact, it may have positive economic impact from the increase of the ecotourism component.
Thank you for that, Alan. Thank you for that, Taylor. I thought that was really important. So, Ashley, I want to bring you in. Thank you for joining us again this evening to talk about Avi Kwa Ame. We haven't been able to talk about it for a while because we've been so focused on the election, but now's the time. We're getting so close. We're so excited. And it is the time to get this over the finish line. There is no slowing this down. We cannot let people stall this. We need to get it done now because we've waited long enough. We had people in the room wearing these awesome stickers today. We had people wearing these awesome shirts. I've got mine on now. It was such a wonderful experience seeing 250 people in mostly these t-shirts and these stickers and buttons supporting this important piece of land. But you were there with a different perspective. You come from the OHV community, which obviously is a super important community for outdoor activities and outdoor recreation in our community, especially in the desert Southwest. So, Ashley, what brings you to this movement, and why do you support designating a place like Avi Kwa Ame, being somebody who loves outdoor activities?
Yeah, thanks, Annette, and really happy to be here with Alan and Taylor. They're also my favorite people too. So the proposed national monument is just, look, like Southern Nevada in general, we are so fortunate to live in an area that has so much beautiful access to public land. Growing up, I always camped and hiked. I was very fortunate. And my dad always threw me on the back of a quad or a jet ski. And so I had a need for speed pretty much all of my life. And as I became an adult and moved to Las Vegas about 10 years ago, I just really fell in love with the desert. I grew up in outside of Yosemite, so big trees and sequoias. And so the desert was very foreign to me, and I didn't really understand the ecological beauty of it. But every time I went into this landscape, it was super beautiful and restorative and just really amazing. And so I just kept finding myself getting drawn farther and farther and farther into the desert. And I'm like, I probably need to start being in a larger vehicle, with a little bit beefier tires if I really want to explore more of this beautiful area. And being in a large metropolis of Las Vegas, the desert does get loved to death in certain capacities. So this particular monument campaign, I find every time I go out there, there's this richness of Wild West, of like what it used to be like 100 years ago, untouched, unperverted, like damaged by a lot of different things. And so my passion has been to bring the OHV and off-roading community into these spaces and understand why they're important. When you drive really fast, down the highway, it looks brown and it looks ugly. But the desert, to me, it forces you to slow down, and it forces you to really understand that there's so much intricacies with the desert, and that being in an off-road vehicle doesn't necessarily mean you have to go fast, but it's definitely an opportunity to get to spaces that maybe you can't see from the highway. So with my outreach that I've been doing, we've had 3 outing and camping guided events with experts in the area, Alan being included, to talk to the off-roading community about why does the rock look like that? Why is this tree important? Oh, what ecological areas, are proponent to tortoises, and what's the impacts of solar? What is the impacts of wind? And so people can really understand it's not just, protect the trees and flowers, but there's really a larger conversation that needs to be had in the off-roading community. And that my approach has been very authentic, and providing people a space to come into this monument, have an experience without, pushing any agenda, just letting them have whatever experience they're having. And then they walk away and they're just like wide-eyed, and they're like, wow, this is such a beautiful area. How can I take care of it? How can I make sure that this stays the way that it is? And it's also educating people about responsible recreation too. And I have found that in my personal recreation, when I go ATVing out in the monument, everyone, there's always a wave, there's always a hi, there's always a check-in, and there's just this huge sense of community in off-roading, and that people want to take care of it and love it more than destroy it, I have found. And so it's just really kind of connecting those conversations with what's important to you and how can we all come together at the same table and have these same conversations. And for the most part, a lot of their off-roading community's objectives and priorities are very similar to the conservation community. It's just a different language. And so in my work, I've just been able to bridge those conversations and have those kind of difficult conversations about concerns. Because the off-roading community is growing, and it's very popular in Southern Nevada. And so voices need to be heard, concerns need to be voiced. And I'm here just to spread awareness and facts and allow people to come to their own conclusions. And the beauty of this area allows people to really just open up and just be really willing to have an open dialogue.
Absolutely. So you were at the meeting with us today down in Laughlin, and it was just such an amazing place to be. I haven't been to a public meeting like that since we did Gold Butte, and made that a national monument. And so I always find these monument campaigns to be so special. What stuck out to you today about the hearing and the public comments, and what was your takeaway about how that meeting went today?
Yeah, I'm quite green when it comes to public hearings. I mean, this is my very first one, so I didn't really have an expectation. I didn't know what was going to happen and how many people or who was going to be there. So I came with it with an open mind and just being authentic to what my little part in the cog has been. But the biggest takeaway is that the people that are living in these communities, the gateway communities, Searchlight, Laughlin, Bullhead City, and Boulder City, and Kalnavari, and the indigenous folks as well, that are all constantly, daily in these landscapes, have been super supportive, that they're on the ground, and the people that it impacts the most are super supportive. And I was really surprised to see that many local folks, because historically, rural desert communities have been historically not supportive of protection. But I think, and I was telling Taylor this, is like, this coalition, I think, has been the model of how coalitions should be ran, as far as the diversity of voices and the collaboration that has been done on this campaign. And so just to see all of the rural communities come on board and just come out in droves and just be super supportive, no matter your age, color, race, whatever it is, like, everyone was just on board. And I was just really surprised by that, because going to these desert communities in my ATV or my off-road, they don't want to be out in public. The reason why they're out there is they don't want to be bothered. And so it was really cool to see all of that.
Yeah, I agree. It was really awesome. Taylor, I want to come back to you. So talk to us about why you got involved with this push to designate Avi Kwa Ame as a national monument, and what it's been like to do that work. Obviously, we're talking about sovereign governments that are advocating for their own land. I mean, this was their land first. And so why is this movement and this monument so important to the tribes here in Nevada, but also the tribes all across the desert Southwest? Because whether they live here in Nevada and whether the tribe is from here in Nevada, it doesn't matter. This is all their land first.
Yes, as our previous Out in Front was titled, "This land is our land," which was my creed all of 4th of July weekend this past year. 2 years ago, just very transparently, my friends at NCL, Nevada Conservation League, a great partner to Battle Born Progress and a great partner to my organization, Native Voters Alliance Nevada, had reached out and said, "Hey, we're working on this new campaign, and would you like to be involved and do some tribal outreach for us?" And I thought, wow, this is going to be a really great off election year project. Like, this will be just something fill kind of the time, and 2020's cycle has passed. Now, we've got some time before 2022. We'll just work on this monument real quick. And it has become so much bigger than that, of course. Like I said, it's been 2 years now, and I had spent so much time in my early childhood in the Mojave Desert, but in the parts of the Mojave that are north north of this area, and more, the Mojave is so big and giant. And so I hadn't spent a lot of time in this area. And, other than the occasional trips to Lake Mead or Mojave, I just really hadn't spent a lot of time in the area. And so I remember right after I hopped on board, I said, okay, like I guess I have to go take a little drive out to Christmas Tree Pass Road. And when I went out there, I was just really struck by the beauty and the unique energy and feel of the area. And when I started talking to elders and more tribal members and folks that have deeper ties into that area, I was really just amazed at the level of connection with that space and just the true cultural corridor that it really was and has been for centuries. We had so many tribal people moving into and throughout that space. And that's why with the Southern Paiute and with all of our human speaking tribes, so much of our traditional songs and knowledge really tie back to this area because so many people were going through it. And so, I just can't underscore enough how special this landscape is. And, so many people today made public comment about how special that area is to all of these tribes. Like I said, we had 8 tribes present today, and everybody had a different view of this area, but still kept the same exact idea that this is sacred to us and holds so many powerful cultural traditions for our people. And, I think about the position that Fort Mojave is in and our other human speaking relatives, and I don't envy it. For the Southern Paiute, our point of creation is in the Spring Mountains. And I've had a lot of people comment about the fact that our point of creation has a ski resort on it. It has homes on it. It has, of course, a lot of people over loving it, as Ashley has says, which I love that phrase. But you have so many people in that area. And I think of the desecration of that. None of those people that are in that space that are skiing up there in the Spring Mountains understand where they are. And if I and any of our tribal partners can help the Mojave people and the human speaking tribes preserve their special place, I'm so happy to do that. And I know our tribal partners are. And I was just really struck by how many of the other tribes were just so giving of their time and their energy to this project, when I don't think people understand just how difficult it really is to be in tribal leadership, because you have so many projects that are pulling your attention. And especially our relatives that are along the Colorado River, you have water issues that are consistently happening, especially with the state of climate change now. And you have so many problems that you're dealing with on a daily. Plus, you add the COVID-19 pandemic on top of that, and you've got a real recipe where people are being pulled in a lot of directions. So I just thought it was a really amazing thing to have those 8 different tribes represented, and Van, of course, being there along with the Native American Land Conservancy, and just having all of our people there. And I know lots of our speakers had commented on how nice it was to see so many brown faces in the audience, because historically these meetings have not been for us either. And I think that I see this project as such a band of misfits, as kind of Ashley was alluding to, because we have so many different folks that normally are ignored by the conservation sort of community. I would say those more, traditional conservationists, I think, don't see tribal folks or outdoor rec or, any of these people as being true conservationists, but we truly are. And that is what I think, as Ashley said, is really special about this project.
Ashley, I want to come back to you. What do you think is so important with the next steps of this monument campaign? Obviously, you've been out there doing education with us. You were at the county commission meeting when the Clark County Commission upheld a resolution by Commissioner Knapp to fully support the monument. We heard from leaders today at the Nevada legislature that the Nevada legislature will be supportive of this. in your eyes, what does the community need to do to make sure that this is the next step? And I do know there's a petition link we can share in the chat so folks can sign the petition. We're very close to having a significant amount of petitions. We're very excited about that. We're going to make a big announcement about it. But I want to make sure that people know how to get involved with this campaign and what they can be doing to help, and in your eyes, what the next steps are.
Yeah, sure. Right now, well, even just last week, I was able to go out again to the monument and bring a really important off-roading leader in the community who has a lot of influence and has a lot of connections to the community. And I have been trying to build that relationship for this last year, and just really fortunate that she was willing to come out with me and explore the area. And just like I said earlier, just bringing her out there and letting her have her own experience. She was super inspired and excited to have more folks come out and even do a cleanup on Christmas Tree Pass after the holidays. And so I think the ongoing work for us in the OHV community is to still keep the conversation alive, keep allowing people to bring opportunities to go out into the area and recreate responsibly, and then continue to just the dialogue around how important conservation is to the off-roading community. Because if we don't have any beautiful places to ride in, we need to protect these places. So for me, for the OHV community, is continuing to share and educate, bring people into the area, and then continue to love it, and then educate other people when they go out. Because what we find is that when people have a really amazing experience with a trail leader from a particular group, then the next time they'll bring out their family, their kids and their partners, and then the next time after that they'll bring out their family friends that are visiting. And so it's a domino effect as far as continuing to have these conversations around the balance between recreation and conservation. And so that's what, I mean, I'm not originally from Las Vegas. I've only been here 10 years, but I'm growing where I'm planted, and I'm going to continue to have a legacy and, to have tough conversations around what conservation and off-roading could look like for the future, and continuing to protect these lands that are really important to me and other people as well.
One of the things that I love about this too, and I just find it so fascinating, is that, as you mentioned, Ashley, anybody that comes out into the space is immediately falls in love. And I certainly don't want to speak for the BLM director, because that's definitely way above my pay grade. But I know when Tracy Stone Manning came out to visit us previously, and really got to see the landscape and got to hear from Fort Mojave very directly, and got to hear Alan's stories about the area too, her heart was changed. And I think people spend so little time in the spaces that are right around us, especially those of us that live in Las Vegas, that as soon as they feel that serenity within the desert that I think a lot of people talked about today, their hearts are immediately changed. They see all of the things that really make the desert special. And I totally agree with you, Ashley. I think people so easily overlook it and so easily drive by and go, yeah, like that's just a patch of dirt. It's a waste of space. The land will just go to waste if it sits there. But that's not what this is. And I'm always amazed by like the ecosystem that exists within the desert. And you see too, once that landscape is not kept intact, just how destructive it is to the land. And that's where you see these insane dust storms and all of these things happening, because the desert is very finely balanced. And I'm so glad that now it is not just Native folks talking about those pieces of interconnectivity between all of us as creatures and lands, but all of the people are starting to realize that. And I have plenty of Native family members that do OHV use. And so it always makes me happy to hear from you, Ashley, just to hear about all the really wonderful work you've done in that community, because I know that is a tough conversation.
It's not as tough as you think. I think my approach is just to come from authenticity and just come from contribution, and just, like I said, just come, be open and willing, and just come. And I've built enough trust in the community here in Southern Nevada. They're like, all right, fine, sure. Well, at least I get to go outside this weekend. And then, yeah, their hearts are forever changed. And I think that's the beauty of living in Southern Nevada is we have so much access to beautiful, rich public land that people on the East Coast or parts of California don't have access to. So if we don't protect it, what's going to happen?
It's now out in front with Taylor and Ashley. I don't need to be here anymore. I'm just going to let them go. It's good. Y'all just fill in. I'm sure Alan will pop in too. So it's good. Okay. So I want to remind people the petition link is in the chat. It's honorspiritmountain.org. So it's in the chat. Please share that with your friends and family. We want as many people, don't have to just be Nevadans. This land is for everyone. So please share it with your friends and family. Have them honor Spirit Mountain as well, honor Avi Kwa Ame as well. So share that link with your friends and family. It's in the chat. Sign it now if you haven't signed it. We want to make sure that we get this to our elected officials and that they understand that they need to make this a monument ASAP because we have waited far too long for this to become a monument. So, Alan, I want to bring you in again and just ask, what are the next steps? And we are getting questions in the chat. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We will get to them in just a few minutes. Also, share this live stream with your friends and family. We see tons of people sharing it right now. It's so exciting. We know people love our public lands in Nevada. So make sure you're sharing this with your friends and family because we want as many people to see this as possible so that we can also amplify this to our elected officials and let them know that they need to make this happen immediately. So Alan, the first question comes from Lisa, and she asks in the chat, does this designation prevent commercial use? And I think that's a really important thing to talk about, what a designation does. And you said it's the highest form of protection, but what does that mean for a monument, and how can a monument be used?
Good. That's an excellent question. And some of the testimony today was from the outdoor recreation business folks. These are small business owners that their livelihood depends upon their business as it relates to providing services on public land. For example, let's take Pink Jeep Tour as an example. They try and show people the natural side of Nevada, and they're permitted to use certain areas. When I was at Lake Mead National Recreation Area, we had a permitting system that allowed these commercial ventures to take place, but under some kind of supervised thing so that the interpretive message they were given, let's say I'm just using Pink Jeep Tours, because they have these new vehicles. They're very comfortable. They're going on the backcountry roads. What kind of message are they actually giving those people? So I think that's the kind of control you need without too much government interference. So yes, commercial activities like that can be permitted. And we've had a lot of businesses come to us and ask that question. Some of them are OHV businesses that want to continue doing business on these particular public lands. And so, those activities can take place, but there will be some supervision to make sure that the service to the visiting public is not bogus information, but quality information about the area.
And then, Alan, for you, we talked a little bit about what a monument means and how it is the highest form of one of the highest forms of designation you can give to a piece of land. But what does a monument designation protection area look like? And can you talk about what it means to be a national monument and the resources an area gets once it becomes a national monument? Because it's not just protection, there's resources that go behind that as well.
Yeah, it significantly elevates the funding opportunities with such a designation. And so we all know how strapped some of the agencies are that manage public lands, and how often people do not see any rangers out on the landscape assisting visitors. You wonder where they are, and part of that's a funding issue. But we think that we have enhanced opportunity to get funding, and that's both to help protect the species, but also I see a tremendous role in education interpretation with the tribal people. Actually being rangers or being volunteers or being docents or whatever you want to do to actually do that educational messaging. So there is a commercial part of this, but all of that has to be designed to make sure that the basic purpose of protecting and making this available to the public, that balance is carefully organized over time. I mean, opening up to vast numbers is not what this landscape calls for. This is a more subtle landscape. Ashley mentioned we have 500 miles of backcountry roads. Well, they need to be kept open. That's always been kind of a marching thing of why we want to do this monument. It's not an idea of closing these roads. It's getting them designated, better sign, better information, so that when people are taking these, they know they're on this route, and that this route goes to point whatever it is, and it's 2.5 miles or whatever mileage, and this is the kind of vehicle you need. You need a high clearance, or in a particular case, you really need a four-wheel drive vehicle, or some you could do with a sedan. But right now, you don't know where those opportunities are out there if you're an OH3 user and such, unless you really study this stuff. And so I know Jill from the Boulder City Chamber gets questions all the time that people want to go out and use these, but is it safe to do so? I mean, that's and she's a little nervous saying, well, yeah, go out that road, it should be okay, and such. But I see I remember when I was at Lake Mead, we ended up numbering in a name. So it'd be, let's say the Boathouse Cove Road, and it's number 248, whatever it is. And all those are on a backcountry map, so that people know that if they take that Boathouse Cove Road, here's what they expect. But right now, it just carcinate signs out there and says designated route. You don't know where the hell it goes to. So, putting some better management in terms of making this a more quality recreation experience will be an important part of the management objective.
All I know is Alan took me and our team on an adventure out to Avi Kwa Ame, and I ripped the bottom part of my car off because he was having us do some wild things in my little tiny Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, and we made it through. But Alan is an expert at those areas, and I would not have known where the hell I was without Alan. So yes, better signage is a must, so that if people like me try to go off-roading, we know where we actually are. That would be great.
Yeah.
Ashley was also laughing at me, so that's funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of social trails. I mean, there's a lot of, you can get turned around really easily, and it's endless. One afternoon we went with an off-roading group, and we're like, let's go in that direction. There's 5 turns later, let's go that direction. Thankfully we have our off-road GPS, our Onyx off-road mapping system, so we can at least get back to civilization or the highway. But yeah, people that are not experienced at all, it can be quite alarming and a little scary for sure.
Yeah, had we not had Alan that day, it would have been trouble. Go ahead, Alan.
Well, they're much better to get help and say, well, I'm somewhere, on this route, at least they know what route and number and name, such as so you have a better chance of people finding you out there. And that's a real safety issue. So.
All right, Taylor, I want to bring it back to you as we wrap up this exciting episode where we're talking about really positive, wonderful things for our communities all across Southern Nevada. This land is not only sacred to our tribal communities, but they also govern a lot of that land that we're talking about in Southern Nevada and across Arizona and California as well. Can you talk about some of the the sovereignty issues that come along with this designation, and why it's so important to follow the tribe's lead on this, and let their voices be heard on this when it comes to this designation.
I feel like there needs to be some sort of out in front OIF, as I've been calling it, drinking game, in which once I mention or you mention sovereignty when I'm on the show, then you have to drink, because it is the biggest topic that our community is dealing with. I think it's an extraordinarily nuanced topic that unless you sort of have been around tribal communities or have some understanding of tribal communities, you don't really have any sort of grasp on tribal sovereignty. And I think it could be a very confusing topic. And I had even seen some of the responses to the nonpartisan votesmartnv.org guide about some of our tribal communities. And, there was so much, these communities need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Like, these were this is a nonpartisan show today, so I won't get into which particular people were saying which particular things.
I think we know, Taylor. Go ahead.
Listen, Annette, you need to put some respect on the Independent American Party candidates. However, so there's this attitude of, they need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They're taking too much government resources. How could they do this, that, or the other? And the issue with that is there was certain agreements made to us as a people via treaties, via the federal government, and during the entire process of us becoming tribal governments. And so there have been agreements made with our people about what the federal government needs to provide us and their responsibilities to tribal governments and the membership of those governments. And so, we are dual citizens. We're citizens of both the United States and whatever tribal nation that we come from. And so this is becoming a very exciting opportunity because we saw a lot of this groundwork and foundation laid with Bears Ears and the cooperative tribal government process that happened within Bears Ears. But now, as with every project, anybody that worked on that project has said, don't do it like this. Here's all of the do's and don'ts. And so I think we'll see with Avi Kwa Ame, we'll be saying the same things of, yes, we had this wonderful cooperative program, but please don't repeat it for this, that, and the other reason. So one of the biggest topics within this sovereignty conversation around conservation is really co-stewardship or co-management. And I have a lot of extraordinarily intelligent Native friends that are working on this in, PhD level dissertations and really trying to piece out what co-management is going to mean for tribal communities and how the federal government and agencies like BLM or the Park Service, if it gets to that point for other monuments, how they can best cooperate with tribes. And so, long story long, as everything I do on Out in Front is, I think it's going to be a really interesting thing to follow. And I've been kind of always echoing, I'm really excited. The designation is just step one, though. I want to see how these management plans are going to work out. I want to see how our tribal governments can really be involved. And Fort Mojave Indian Tribe has taken such lead on this project. And they always excite me because they are one of the most amazing tribes I've worked with as far as self-efficacy while still staying grounded in tribal values and cultural values. And so I am so excited to see what they ask of the federal government and what they ask of in this process, because they want to be involved in this monument from the very, very basic levels all the way up. And so I think, it's... Again, long story long, it's complicated, but we're going to see a really interesting piece this next step. I'm putting it out to the universe. Once we get designation, we'll see some really cool stuff happen with stewardship and co-management with our tribes.
Thank you for that, Taylor. All right, Alan, final thoughts on protecting Avi Kwa Ame permanently through a national monument and where we go from here.
Well, obviously, we think we've done our homework. We've gone through the difficult steps of engaging the right people, having the right conversations. It's a citizen-driven thing. It's not a government-driven process. And we feel like we've delivered and we're ready to pass a baton and ask the president to designate this. And I can think of no other place in the country that is so ready, has done their homework, and for such a designation. So obviously, we don't want to just say, "Hey, we had a good public meeting." We want to make sure that we put the pressure on the administration to deliver. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the Biden administration needs to deliver on America the Beautiful initiative. I haven't seen too many initiatives coming out of that, and 2030 is not too far away to protect 30% of our land and waters in Nevada by 2030. Avi Kwa Ame is probably the biggest bang for the buck we can get in terms of that. So I think we're lined up to get this job done, and it's time to push it past.
Thank you, Alan. All right, Ashley, final thoughts on getting this done and where we go from here.
I'm just so excited that it's just I'm the baby of the group. I've only been involved for the last year, and I'm just so excited to see this come to fruition for all of the people in the room today. I was like, I want this for you. And I want this for the off-highway vehicle and off-roading community. I'm just so ecstatic because it's only 30-45 minutes from my front door that I can go out and enjoy pristine natural desert habitat, and the skylines are amazing. Dark night sky, like where can you see a dark night sky so dark being so close to Vegas? So yeah, I'm just fortunate to be a part of this group of amazing people that are moving and shaking and doing some cool things, and I can't wait for the next project.
Absolutely. All right, Taylor, you got the last word.
Don't I always, whether you like it or not, Annette? I like Ashley, I'm very excited. I guess, I think this may seem fast for a lot of people because it seems like, oh goodness, like 200 plus people came out today to support, but that really is such a reflection of the hard work that's been done on the ground. I can't even begin to name all of the stakeholders that have been involved in this process, all of the people that were helpful in drawing the boundaries, that sat with Alan over a map and really got down to the brass tacks of it all and drew this out, and the hard work that's been done by our tribal folks, by our NGO partners, by the townships that are by the monument. And so I guess my next question is, what's the holdup? We've heard great things from BLM. We've heard great things from Department of Interior. We have Congresswoman Dina Titus and Susie Lee that have been very, helpful in leading this movement. We've heard support from Senators Rosen and Cortez Masto. So I guess my next question is just, when are we getting our designation? As far as I can see, we got all of our P's and Q's lined up, our I's dotted, our T's crossed. So now we got to get that monument pushed ahead. And I'm so grateful to the support of all of our federal delegation on this one. And it's so exciting that we really have some great leadership in Nevada. And I know, Annette, you worked so hard on this last election, and I worked so hard on this last election. So it's just really exciting that, we do all this, we push and push and push and get these folks in office, and that, they're going to show some really great leadership on this project. And I'm really excited. I hope we get a designation before Christmas break. That's my goal.
Well, from your mouth to the goddess's ears, we better have a monument by Christmas break. That's all I know. I just almost killed myself getting people reelected.
So we don't want you dead in that.
No, didn't die. I'm still alive and kicking, unfortunately for some people. But yeah, here I am. So yeah, hopefully we will have a monument by Christmas because we've been working on this very long time. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much to our fabulous panel of experts on Avi Kwa Ame. We appreciate you always for doing the work that y'all do to help us protect our important public lands. This is my 4th monument campaign in Nevada. Lived here all my life, by the way. So, born and raised here, wouldn't go anywhere else. and irritate anyone else. And I love Avi Kwa Ame. I like I said, Alan had the opportunity to take us down there, and we had a great time with Alan and saw this magnificent place. And it's on par with Basin and Range and Tule Springs and Gold Butte, which we worked on. And so this absolutely has to be the next place that we designate. I cannot think of a more special place than this one. And so it is the responsibility of our delegation to get this done for the people of Nevada and our surrounding states to make sure that this is our next national monument. And we need every single elected official to call on the Biden administration, call on Queen Deb, as we call her here, but Secretary Holland, to make this our next national monument, and make sure that our tribal communities' voices are heard, and make sure that their voices are the most important voice at the table, because this is their land. So hope everybody that's watching calls your senators and calls our representatives and encourages them to support this national monument and not delay the process in any way, shape, or form, because we need this designated now. We've been working a long time for this monument, for years for this monument, and it shouldn't have taken this long, but here we are. So we're going to ask them now to do their jobs and make this a national monument, and respect the boundaries that the tribal communities have laid out for them, and move this forward swiftly. So with that, I want to say thank you, everyone. It is Native American Heritage Month, and so I can't think of a better way to respect our tribal communities and our Indigenous people than designating this sacred piece of land for them during this month. So thank you all for joining us.
Bravo.
Yeah, the bravo, right, Alan?
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us this week on Out in Front. I'm going to let you know we are taking next week off because my entire team is tired. And we will be back the following week, hopefully with good news on our monument coming soon. So we will be out next week for OIF. We will not be having OIF next Thursday. But we will be back the following week with another show. So thank you all for joining us. Remember, call your senators, call your representatives now. We need you to make your voices heard and let them know they need to do this monument, and they need to keep it whole and do it swiftly. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in December. Have a great week, everybody.